Hour 2 Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan. Big hour, Luke Willson coming up later in the hour, Thursday night or tonight. Timo and Wilson on the clock. And Cooper Kupp is back. Rams at home against Minnesota.
Why do they want to trade him?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess maybe it's them recognizing they're not that good anymore. Maybe they're not sure they're going to make the playoffs. I think he has been injured a lot. They may be concerned that he's going to get injured again and try to get out from under him. And if I'm another team, if I think he's healthy, I'm attacking Cooper Kupp, man. You see who's been traded recently, really good wide receivers in Adams and Hopkins and Cooper and
you only need 2 years out of him because that's all he has left in his deal at $20 million, but it's still
really all you need is this run.
Yes,
you know what I mean. If you're a team that's in contention, and I don't have an answer for who that might be, but let's say you're Baltimore or something like that.
Go get him.
Maybe you can get him, and if he stays healthy for you, you know this guy can run routes, make catches, and his yards after the catch are crazy.
I'm almost positive. I saw one of the NFL insiders throwing Matthew Stafford's name out.
I haven't seen that, but I guess if you're McVay and the Rams and you got your ring, Aaron Donald retired, Kupp's going to go, it would be the turning of a page and basically the end of an era where you just accept this is where we're at and we're going to move on. I don't recall the last time a quarterback of that stature got traded, though, during the season. You know, that kind of stuff happens maybe during the offseason or a guy gets cut for some reason and moves on, but which team would be looking for him?
Dude, that's
Cleveland?
the thing. It must have been a bogus account because I'm almost
There's no way Stafford's getting
Dude, I'm almost positive it was a check mark verified NFL insider, and the other team was Minnesota.
Thing is, Darnold's been pretty good.
That's what I thought.
Sam Darnold's
been unbelievable and a massive reason why the Vikings have a good record. Why would they want Matthew Stafford?
Well, Stafford's still better. Darnold has been good, but Stafford is better. Maybe what that
Doogie,
is.
see if that was a real rumor.
See what you can do, Doogie. Try to get to the bottom of that. Oh, you found something already, Doogie? Or are you just showing me your phone to confirm that you are, in fact, looking for something? What was that messaging from you, Doogie? What do you have?
Zero truth. Look at your phone. Yeah.
Zero truth. That was the look.
Worded that a little differently, Doogie.
I'm flashing a light over here.
Okay, that's the international look at your phone. That's on me, Doogie. I should have been looking at my phone. I didn't pick up on that body language. That was a harsh rebuttal from your statement or your inside report.
Yeah. Okay.
0% truth.
Odesk, 04.
Yeah, the Odesk is bagels. Right now, fake news is right.
Noodles, we mentioned before we went to break in Ottawa or in Vegas, who is playing goal tomorrow? Give us some skinny on that.
Well, they had 3 goalies out there today. An hour ago when I was here. I think Ullmark is available to play, but Forsberg was so good last game. What do you do? Do you save Ullmark for Sunday in Colorado, or do you play Ullmark tomorrow and go back with Forsberg? Forsberg was unbelievable the other night, unbelievable in Utah. That game should have been different, guys. It was the first 8 minutes of the game, Utah was all over them, and Forsberg was unbelievable. So he gets the shutout. I don't know if you go back. That's the question today. I didn't hear what Greeny had to say, but he did say in his media the other day that I think Ullmark could have played in Utah, but they gave him the extra 3 days. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ullmark plays here tomorrow against Vegas.
Yeah, I'd be saying you're playing Vegas and Colorado.
Yeah, I think it is.
He's your number one guy. You paid him, you required him.
You're right. Here's the thing, though. It comes back to, and it's a different scenario, but Stolarz, we talked about it yesterday. Stolarz has only played 28 games, I think, the most in a season. Ullmark's got something with a 4 in it. I don't think he's ever played 50 games, right? So if let's say he gets to 53, 55, that's still, you need Forsberg for 30, and that's the thing. So Forsberg, he's not just a filler. It's still a tandem situation, but I think you expect Ullmark to play more. I'd like to see him to play tomorrow. I think it's been long enough, and I think they've given him, he's had lots of full practices. He looks good out there, so I'd like to see him play.
I wouldn't put money on it that he plays.
Me neither. After what we've seen the last 3 or 4 years, it wouldn't be shocked if Report comes out an hour before the game. Not
ready.
Ready.
Not quite ready. That's always what it is. Close. Not quite ready.
Still
Not
some stiffness.
Still a little bit of stiffness there. Not quite ready. But yeah, I do think his situation's different from Wall, like we've talked about all week. Like Allmark he's the number one. You know, Forsberg's going to have to play, but he's making $8.25 million starting next year. He's the guy.
And also, he doesn't have a history. Like, he hasn't missed games prior to this, or, you know, even in past seasons, he hasn't been banged up and missed a bunch of games. I just think it's unfortunate that, you know, after game 2, he's been nicked up.
It happens so quickly, yeah. And as for Joseph Wall, he's been reactivated, and he's playing tonight with St. Louis in town on TSN. Joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline, here's our TSN hockey insider, Pierre LeBrun. Pierre, how often do you make calls just simply on the status of goalies in the league right now?
Closer to playoff time, I'd say.
Really?
I don't get too worked up in October about that. There's lots of hockey to play. But
a lot of injuries, man. A lot of injuries going on.
Oh, obviously, if they're significant, that's different for sure. No question about it.
Okay.
One of the things that I was thinking today is I wonder how much money Craig Berube has on the board.
Yes.
With his Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah. What's the limit on that? Like, is there a number that would have to be on the board for the players to take it seriously? You know, like if he puts up $250, are players like, just keep your money, man. We don't need that. Or
you could just put up a string of toilet paper. It would have the same effect.
Yeah, $250 is not going to
You got to put up. You got to say, I got $10,000 cash in my office. Whoever scores a game-winning goal, more than welcome to come in and just grab it. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I remember years ago, and really, it must have been some 20 years ago. It was after a game, and whoever the visiting coach was in Toronto actually told us in the post-game media scrum how much money he had put on the board. Like, it was very specific about it, and it was in everyone's lead in their game stories. And he got reprimanded the next day by the league that said, you know, maybe just don't blurt that out so openly to the whole world. Like, everyone knows it's a custom and a tradition, but maybe don't put the number out there for the whole world to know. So
I love it.
I always remember that. Yeah.
And listen, there's been countless examples of the team losing. Like, if the Leafs lose tonight, that money just goes right back in Craig's pocket, I guess.
Well, I guess the money went back in Sheldon Keefe's pocket when he played the Leafs earlier this year.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I always wonder. I think it's different. You know, when a player does it with his teammates and the players. I mean, listen. Can you imagine Steve Stamkos money on the board Monday in Tampa with Nashville? I mean, the guys in that Nashville dressing room not understand how big that game will be for Steven Stamkos. But I'm just always curious what it means for players and coaches. You know, the relationship is different. Listen, you can love your coach all you want, but at the end of the day, you know, he's not a teammate. So I was curious about that too.
Yeah. I guess it would mean more if it's like I don't know, Chris Tanev. Who would he be up against, though? Is it Dallas? Is it
anybody
Calgary?
that has a connection like that, whether it be a big wig like Steven Stamkos, you just want to play your ass off and you want to have your best game because you don't want anyone to be embarrassed.
That's a big one. Stamkos playing Tampa.
Dude, that's 10 G's in a duffel bag, too.
But
minimum.
You know what, though? Like, guys know it. Like, the Tampa Bay Lightning will know it, too, because half of those guys will go for dinner with him the night before. You know, like it'll be their first time seeing him.
You can name the place. You can name the place. You can name the place. Come on now, Noodles. You can name the place in Tampa that all the players go eat.
You know where he's going?
Well, they'll end up going to a place and hanging out, I'm sure. These guys, like, keep in mind, you said one word, and this is true, Pierre. It's October. So you do create some excitement and stuff for big games, even though it's October. This will be a big game for Steven Stamkos. It'll be weird for him to walk into that building and he's got to go left instead of right. He's got to, everything's going to be off for him. For Craig Berube, I think it's a different feeling because, he doesn't, he's only been around here, 2 months, we'll call it. And he does have relationships with the guys, but not that deep. So I think the guys will be more motivated how poorly they played in Columbus. And then you add the cherry on top with Craig Berube's former team. You want to get some marks. So I think there is kind of a double-edged, thing there for the Leafs. But for Steven Stamkos, I think that's more of a personal thing. I don't know if the guys in the Nashville dressing room would be like, God, we got to do it for Steve, because he's been there for a month. He's been there for 2 months.
Marsh is probably doing the same thing too, right? He's like, when we play Vegas, man, hook me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Burns Steakhouse in Tampa.
Okay, that's the spot. You getting free steaks for that shout out? What's the story there, Pierre?
I can't even get in anymore. It's so popular. It's got an amazing wine cellar from wines from the last 5 decades. Oh my gosh, I love that place.
All right.
But in any case, the other thing with Berube too, it's never fun to get fired. But his exit from St. Louis was really. I mean, they all left on good terms. Doug Armstrong, that was such a difficult fire for him. He loves Craig Berube. The players that want to cup with him in 19. So I guess what I'm saying is sometimes you coach against your former team, and there's a bit of an edge there about how things went down and so on. But in this case, a lot of those people have relationships and friendships for life when it comes to Craig Berube and the Blues. So I don't think, obviously he wants to win because you're so competitive. But at the end of the day, I don't sense any bitterness at all with how that exit happened there. I mean, he was there for a while. He won a cup, and he went out with his head high. So it is important, I think, for context in those things. And Berube had nothing but good things to say about the St. Louis Blues.
Well, and I'm sure it helps that now he's in Toronto. He got a job. He's probably got a massive pay boost. Like, it's worked out pretty well for him, Personally, it hurts, but professionally, he's probably like, nah, I'm not in a bad spot here.
He'd have some more hatred if he was sitting on his couch.
That's what I'm saying. If you got fired and you're calling around and you're like, can I get back in the league? I hate that former team. Now, it's all good, man. Love everyone over there. I'm making 3 times the amount of money here in Toronto. It's all good.
I don't know if it's 3 times, but he definitely. It's my understanding is it's a 4-year deal and starts with a 4. So
yeah, it's a lot of money.
I think he's doing all right.
I think Craig's doing okay here. With Pierre LeBrun, our TSN hockey insider. All right, I want to play this clip. Connor McDavid was asked about the captaincy for Canada at the Four Nations Cup coming up in February. Here's how he answered that.
All the leaders on that team. Does it matter who wears the seat?
Should be said for sure. That's not even a question.
So, he went on to say Sid's done it a bunch. I don't even know why we're asking this. It should be Sid. Is that him just being humble? Is that the hockey answer that he's supposed to give? Or is that kind of a foregone conclusion among the players that obviously Sid is going to be the captain of Canada?
Yeah, and they haven't announced it yet. And honestly, it's funny because I've written a bunch about Team Canada of late, but I've not even asked that question myself because they usually announce that closer to the event in February. But to me, to answer your question, I never thought it was even in question. How is it not Sidney Crosby? The only way it wouldn't be Sidney Crosby is if he felt it was time to pass the torch, I guess.
Yes.
Well, Sidney Crosby could go up to them and say, look, maybe it's time for Connor to take this thing into the next 10 years.
And that may be. Yeah.
That could happen.
I could see that too, for sure. It's certainly not going to be contentious. Regardless of who wears the seat between those two, I think you understand which voices you're listening to in that room when the chips fall down.
Yep.
I think Sid gets the captaincy for this one, but for the Olympics, it might be a different story. Because that's where I think maybe Sid goes to McDavid and goes, this is I'm going to pass the torch here. Like this Four Nations Cup, I don't know how serious it is and all of that. Like,
I don't know, man. I got to tell you, Noodles, I was spending a lot of time prepping for this, and I reported this earlier this week, but I was surprised. Like last weekend, Julian Brisebois scouted Leafs Rangers. The next day, he got on a plane and he scouted Jets, Pittsburgh, and Winnipeg. Kyle Dubas was in Ottawa last Saturday for Lightning Center. All the GMs on this brain trust are going to scout other games not involving their teams for this Team Canada roster. Like, they are digging in like crazy between now and December 2nd. So I will tell you, I think they're taking this way more seriously than the outside world perceives. Because I think they see it as a tee up to Italy. They want to get this right now because they want this to be the process that gets them to the right call for the Olympics.
Yeah, I agree. Like they're digging in. I saw Kyle in Ottawa there the other day. You're right, but it's from a fan standpoint. Like if they win, whoever wins, like it's It's only 4 nations. It's not the whole world. Like, to me, the Olympics
Yeah.
is the big one. This is just a precursor. My point is I think it's easy for Sid to be the captain here, but then you can make McDavid for the real one in the Olympics. That's where Sid's 2 years older. Now he might hand it off. I think it's Sid's captaincy, this one, but the Olympics might be a little bit different.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know.
Let me ask you guys this, since we're talking about this. But a comment that John Cooper gave me earlier this week here in Toronto. I mean, I think he was hinting at some of the difficult decisions they had here before December 2nd. But he said, part of their conversation is, do we take the 23 best players or the 23 players that makes us the best team? And I think he was trying to say something. And listen, we always lose our minds anyway when Team Canada gets announced the best on best. I mean, poor Jimmy Duffy, I got to throw him under the bus this week when I reminisced over the 2014 Canadian Olympic team being announced. And the second question from Duffy to Steve Eisman live on TSN after the Olympic announcement was, how hard was it to leave off Marty St. Louis? But that's us. That's Canada. And I mean, Steve Eisman's eyes almost pierced a hole. And
Pierre, I would have asked that first because that's what the whole country wanted to know.
Well, I know, but that's, and what's funny is you will still hear people talking about who shouldn't have been on the 2010 Olympic team and the 2014 Olympic team with quite a lot of vigor and passion. And guess what? Canada did win gold at those two events. I'm just gonna say.
Yep, exactly.
So we really torture ourselves into. But again, when Cooper said that to me this week, I was like, oh boy. He's trying to get us ready for, can you believe they didn't name this guy? Because they're looking at different roles and PK and this and that, and I get it.
I'd be careful with that, though. I mean, they've done that in the past, and there's, I think, multiple lessons you'd think they would learn from the past, including in '98, where they felt like they had to pass the baton to Lindros, and it was awkward because Gretzky's on the team. It's like, Eric, you're the captain, and that. I think you look back on it now, you're like, why would you do that? And I would suggest the same thing. If Sid's there, he should just be the captain. Like, if he's not good enough to play, then don't be on the team. But if you're on the team, it's because you're on based on merit, which means you're one of the guys, which means you're the leader. That would be my suggestion. Do not get away from it until he decides, I'm not playing anymore, or I can't play anymore, and they decided for him. And the other lesson you would think they'd learn is when they overthink that stuff in the past, Pierre. Like, we got to have... Rob Zamner's the guy that everyone uses as a reference, but
but the more recent one, I guess, would be Chris Kunitz went to Sochi, Russia.
But that was because of Sid, though. That was different.
And I don't think it worked that well, except the Canada won goals anyway. But I don't think it worked that well.
Sure,
the game was at a higher pace, right?
So I guess the question is, like, Zach Hyman, tough time to bring this up because he's got 0 points in 7 games. But the whole country collectively seems to have just granted him a spot on the left side with
What if
McDavid.
he's got 3 goals by December when they name the team? How could you possibly name him?
But which category would category
Yeah.
would he fall in, though? As one of the 23 best players or a guy that makes the team better, Pierre?
I think he would fall in that second category if he's playing better, that they would view him as a guy that complements McDavid so well. Very similar to what happened with Kunitz and Crosby.
Right.
But obviously, if Zach was on air with us right now, he'd say he's got to bring his game to the next level here before then.
Sure.
And that's why, I'm sure people are rolling their eyes and saying, oh, my gosh, why is Don Sweeney and all these GMs for Canada at all these different rinks right now? Because these games matter. They got to name the thing by December 2nd. They have very few games to watch. And, of course, they came into this year already. They worked on a list together in Edmonton in August. And they have already an idea of their hierarchy of players, but they really want to take the hottest, the players with the body of work / who's playing at their best. I mean, that matters, and it goes without saying, especially matters for the guy in net for Team Canada.
Why would they? If that's true, Pierre, and they want to get the hottest guys, December 2nd's too early to name the team then.
Bingo.
That's valid as well. Yeah.
Why not make it January 20th or January 15th?
That has been a hot button topic. At the Board of Governors meeting earlier this month, Bill Daly confirmed that the GMs for some of the Four Nations teams complained to him that it was too early and that they wanted to push it back. And the answer we got from Bill Daly was that it is extremely important to the NHLPA to keep the deadline where it is because players want to know ahead of time Am I in this thing in February or am I not? And then I can plan ahead and so on. Very similar to a lot of the Olympic deadlines. And so it's a PA issue as far as why they need this so early for December 2nd. But it's a pain in the butt for USA and Canada especially. I mean, it really is, because you're down to the last 3-4 spots on each of those two teams. Both of those countries are so deep. And you may regret a decision that looked great on December 2nd, but looks pretty dumb on February when the guy you didn't take scored 20 goals in that period. I mean, there's no question about it. That's the risk.
It is.
Sure, guys can make different travel arrangements with the resources they have.
Well,
yeah,
that's true. And what else is going to happen is guys are going to get hurt between December 2nd and the tourney. And then the guy who books a trip to Vegas is going to get called and say, actually, you're on the team now.
Yeah.
So what does it matter? Like 95% of the league is not going to this tournament. You know, like a fourth line guy is not like, hey, can we do this on December 2nd? I'd like to know where I am in February. Like I can tell you where you won't be. The Four Nations Cup.
Are you saying Steven Lorenz can go ahead and book in the Bahamas already?
I think him and Reeves and Camp, all the boys can book whatever they want. They're not playing.
But to your point, though, one of the things I believe, I haven't confirmed this 100%, but it's common sense, I guess, but one of the things that each of the 4 countries will do is that some of the bubble guys that end up not making it will be told if they're first in line for potential injury replacement, because there will be injuries, unfortunately. And so, to your point, he may have a booked trip for wherever, but he'll also have been warned that, hey, if we lose a center, we lose a D, you're in, it's pretty much you or the other guy. So those guys will know that.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the goaltending. One of the Canadian goalies that was on the radar in the past. Well, I was about to mention Tristan Jarry, who's been sent back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
He's not even with the team Noodles. They just said, you go back to Pittsburgh. We'll figure you out when we come home.
I saw that. They're sending him back to work with John Elkin, the goalie coach. So it's a reset for him.
That's a wild scene, man.
Jake Allen, they did that too in St. Louis, I think. They were on a road trip. And they said,
Hitchcock did that.
Take a timeout.
Yeah. Who are you referencing, Noodles?
Well, I was talking about Bennington playing tonight. He should be on Team Canada's radar. I think
he's number one right now.
He'll be one of the 3 for sure.
I think he's the number 1 guy right now until further notice. And then then it's wild, wild world of sports after that, man. I mean, Connor Ingram in Utah and Samuel Montembeault and
Montembeault. Aiden Hill hasn't been playing well. Skinner will be there, but he's playing terribly.
Skinner and Aiden Hill, I think. Yeah. But, I mean, Montembeault is a nice goalie, but his numbers will stink by December 2nd, unfortunately.
Yeah. The guy that I thought, and maybe it's not too late, Noodles, but the guy that I thought if he had a hot start in October because of his pedigree winning the Cup a couple of years ago, is Darcy Kemper in LA, because the Kings usually do a nice job of rehabbing goalie stats. And I thought if Kemper had gotten, but of course he pulled something and he's on the IR, which is too bad for him, but he's sort of
Ottawa laid 8 on him that night, and that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is it's like the resets, I understand, but the only thing that's concerning for me about Jarry, we're not 34 games into the season. We're 5, 6, 7 games into the season, depending on how much your team has played. So that's what's concerning for individually for Tristan Jarry. Is I like him as a goalie, but
didn't he just resign too?
He signed in the summer
year.
of 23. Yeah, in the summer of 23, when he was becoming UFA, and it was, I think, one of Kyle Dubas' first moves. I'm not picking on Kyle Dubas, but they extended him a 5-year deal. So
man.
That was that was interesting.
Yeah, but it's not a huge. It's $5 million a year. That's a third line left winger nowadays. Keep in mind.
Yeah.
And the goalie union
back in Pittsburgh.
The goalie union there. I heard.
I'm just saying, there's lots of duds kicking around making $5 million. We could have a dud list for in the league. You could do one of those, Hayes.
I could do it. Maybe I will do a dud list. A $5 million dud list. It is Thursday. I could do that.
That's
you want any part of that? The dud list?
But you know what? Like
I could have a 30-pack. Are you doing a hazy list today?
I have one in store. Yeah, I'll see what we
if
got.
You
want to
wait for tomorrow? do a 10-pack of it, $5 million duds.
Something like it's got to be within $500,000 either way.
No,
it's
got to be $5 million.
Well, I don't know how many guys are making like right on 5. What I'm saying, if it's between 4.5 and 5.5 million, somewhere in that range.
Yeah,
I'll give you my
10-pack. You can get a 10-pack of $5 million stiffs.
I could find
Twitter
a
will
10-pack.
help you, dude.
Okay.
That's $5 million. That's like overdrive host salary range too, right? $5 million.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that.
exactly.
I can't imagine that's the case.
Pesos.
Yeah, exactly, in yen. All right, Pierre. Well, enjoy your evening tonight. We'll do it again soon. Thank you, buddy.
Right on. All right, boys.
There he is, Pierre LeBrun, our TSN Hockey Insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Luke Willson is in the house. He's walked right through the studio looking for Doogie. I think he's looking for Doogie, man. He's not happy with Doogie. Something happened. He thinks Doogie, I don't know what's going on here, but he's claiming shady behavior from Doogie.
Yeah.
Whatever that's supposed to be.
I hope he plays the video when he's in here.
Well, I think there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for the video that you're referencing, if it's the one I think you're referencing, but I'm not sure we're going to have time for that. We got a big game tonight. We got a lot going on in the NFL.
Okay.
So we'll see what comes of it. But Luke's coming up. We've got Joe Bowen coming up, and my sit-down with Matt Sundin coming up into the 6 p.m. hour leading up to the game tonight, Leafs Blues. Panel night. Enjoy yourself. Have a great panel tonight.
Guys, have a great show.
Bring your A game. Don't be a dud, because the dud list, I might save it for tomorrow.
Dude, I ask you, $5 million dud list. I want a 10-pack.
Okay. I'll come up with as many as I can. I'll do it. All right. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.
Dog. If you smell what the Luke Willson is cooking.
All right. Here we go. Week 8, Thursday night or tonight. Rams at home against the Vikings. There he is, our main man, Luke Willson. There's Noodles, Wayne Newton.
Noodles, how we doing?
I'm good, buddy. Just in Vegas, grinding away.
I got a stray hair here, man. I got a stray hair somewhere.
I know. My hair's been on. I'm not in a good place right now. Not in a good place in terms of the follicles.
How's everything going back there? Because I'm waiting for Luke to call Doogie a scumbag right away.
So, Noodles, you're on it. And before I jump to conclusions, because right now everybody's charged up, but I'm not going to lie. I need some answers because I knew you were a scumbag, Hayes. I definitely knew Al's brother is the epitome of a scumbag.
Right.
Doogie, I wasn't sure about, but I saw a video, and I'd like you to play it, and maybe I'm going to give Doogie the benefit of the doubt to explain to me what's going on here first, Noodles. Please play the video. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Okay.
Doogie, 200 cash. That's what we agreed upon. You know what to do. Week 8, make it a great week for Hayes and Bro.
No way. No way.
Okay, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for this.
What is that?
I want to keep you guys in the hunt.
We're in the lead.
I'm paying Doogie off to make sure that you guys feel good about yourselves so that Hayes and Bro can do what we've done recently, allow you to get a lead so we can storm back and be here
I
at
wish
the end of the year.
there was a camera
Very
on Doogie's
charitable
face right now. He's blushing. He's so embarrassed.
Doogie,
come clean.
That's true.
Thank you, Doogie.
Hayes is totally
You're
right.
a scumbag.
you.
It's official.
That's the only truth there is.
You're a scumbag. Doogie's officially a scumbag. It's a battle of good
I
versus
take
That
both
is not
sides.
true.
I
That is
take
not
both
true.
sides.
Here is, if anyone has a gripe with Doogie, it's me. So, Noodles, you're on the group chat. And Doogie, make sure that we all know what games we're playing. Tonight's a formality. It's whoever's on the clock. There's no, it's not like the 1 p.m. window where there's 7 or 8 games and Doogie's got to be the one that picks which one we're playing. This one's simple. Who's on the clock? There it is. That's the original.
That's
picture.
from last year.
Yeah, but there's still remnants of that picture hanging around the studio. That's Doogie and Luke with a little greasy golden handshake.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
how's
greased the
everything
guy
going?
last year. I greased him last year.
So here's what happened today.
Okay.
Doogie announces the formality that they're on the clock. No one needed that information because we knew it. They're the ones that are going to pick the game tonight. And then right underneath it, Doogie sends you a nugget that whichever team is coming off a game against the Detroit Lions gets pumped across the board, which is significant information considering the Vikings just played the Lions and they're playing tonight. Doogie's supposed to be an arbitrary commissioner that has no bias whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's a big nugget that you probably weren't aware of before Commissioner Doogie hooked you up.
Noodles, do you want me to tell you what's going on right now, Noodles? Because Noodles he's a man of integrity.
Is he?
He's a man of integrity.
Okay. We'll
and what's
see about
happening is, and now it's official because the handshake, and I'm like, oh, funny, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
You know that we're picking the Vikings. Doogie knows we're picking the Vikings, and everybody knows that the Vikings are covering this 2.5 today. So Doogie, who's now on the take per the video, is sending in Al's brother idiot stats to try and sway me to not take the Vikings.
That is a very Al's brother stat.
This is a
that is very valid,
deep-rooted conspiracy. Doogie's clearly on the take, but it's okay because Noodles, at the end of the day, Doogie can be on your team.
Yeah.
We had a couple bad weeks. We're already back in the lead.
You're plus
We're
two
going to be
going
plus,
tonight.
we're plus one, right?
You're plus one.
Plus one.
Yes, play one.
But
that's right. I don't want to
foreshadowing. Tonight will be plus 2.
Okay.
Doogie sent the slate. There's a good shot we'll be. Now, I got a feeling me and Parts are going to go back and forth because we do have the Bill-Seahawks game.
Okay.
Which might cause a rift between me and Parts.
Those are two teams that you have a tough time kind of getting a read on.
I mean, I know where I'm leaning, and I got a feeling he's not going to like it.
Okay. I think I know where that is.
I digress. We'll wait for tomorrow on that.
All right.
But I got a feeling that this is going to be a very, very good weekend. I mean, if I could say, since the Leafs season started, Al's brother has pretty much kicked you to the curb.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm on his Twitter. He's not here today. He's back selling trading cards. He tweeted the other day that he needed a new cruise.
I know.
He's all about the Leafs. And last night he had some, I don't follow the Leafs like you guys do, but some sort of weird tweet about them losing to Columbus and yada, same old team. It was weird. I didn't know what was going on.
I know.
I don't think he cares anymore.
I am worried about that. He is conflicted right now. He does not seem to be a man.
He's not focused.
Hyper-focused.
Yeah.
But we'll get to him tomorrow, and it's all good. You like Minnesota tonight.
I do.
Obviously, you're locking that play in. Do you think from a Rams perspective there's something to this Cooper Kupp trade discussion? Matt Stafford's name has been thrown out there, which I find hard. When was the last time a superstar quarterback got traded at the deadline? That never happens.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things going on here. I think if you look at the Rams now, the rumor is Puka Nacua is playing tonight.
Yeah, it sounds like he's been activated, and I think he'll play.
How many snaps? Who knows? But I look at this and it's like, okay, we're 2-4, and you've got a division. Seattle's right now 4-3. San Fran is banged up. They have a million injuries at wide receiver. But I don't think if you're the Rams, you're sitting here and you're saying we have a Super Bowl ready team.
Mm-hmm.
If they're healthy, they can have a very, very great offense. I mean, I think the running back there, Kyren Williams, is incredible if you can keep Puka and Cooper healthy, etc. But my thought process is Matthew's probably only got a couple years left. And it's one of those things where if the Rams don't feel like they can compete with the Lions, with the Vikings tonight, this will be a good matchup, or the division, so to speak, get rid of Matthew, give him one more shot. He's obviously got one ring. Try and get him somewhere. I know one of the spots have been Minnesota, where he has a shot at another ring.
Oh, man, would that be something?
That would be electric.
If he came back to the NFC North with that defense, with those offensive weapons, too, they're loaded on Minnesota.
Loaded.
And
loaded.
To the point where Sam Darnold, to his credit, he's played well, but he has been lifted up by everyone around him.
By far.
You put Stafford on that team, that would be terrifying. If you're a Lions fan, that's
collision
terrifying.
Course of the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings
yes.
in the NFC Championship.
Although I'm telling you that Green Bay is going to be better by the end of the year.
So here's
they
one
look
for
really
you.
good to me.
Here's one, and it was funny. We were talking today about our Sports Center hit, and they're talking about Cooper Kupp. You just mentioned it, Hayes. They said, there's landing teams. Someone says the Chargers. I'm like, why would Cooper Kupp want? I mean, I get they need a receiver, but they're not trying to throw the ball there. No. I know last week against the Cardinals they did, but other than that game, they're not trying to throw. They're trying to run the football. That's Harbaugh's MO. Imagine putting Cooper Kupp on the Green Bay Packers. This receiving core has a lot of good weapons.
Yes.
They do not have a star. They're also, money-wise, the smallest receiving room.
They're not paying anything for anyone on offense right now.
So I'm like, man, if the Packers believe that they have a shot at this thing, why not go get a Cooper Kupp?
That's an interesting thought. I think their pushback might be maybe they don't feel like they're quite ready to take that last step to Super Bowl status. Like I could see them thinking that we want to grow together. And if you bring in Kupp, like how does the rest of that room filter out? Like, I don't know if I trust Watson. He gets hurt too often. Romeo Dobbs has already had issues with his coaching staff because he doesn't like the way he's been being utilized.
Yes.
To the point where I believe they kicked him out of practice recently.
They did.
Which is significant. Jaden Reed is not a number one. Dontavius Wicks is not a number one. I hear what you're saying.
So,
I mean, if Kupp comes in, can he stay healthy?
I know you're a Packers guy. That's a great question.
Can he stay healthy?
But if you're looking at the NFC right now, and you're the Vikings, you're the Packers, you're one of the teams. After last week, it's hard for me to say the Falcons, but let's put them kind of on the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Detroit Lions.
Yep.
They are a clear cut. If you were to start the playoffs today, I think everyone's favorite in the NFC. I'm specifically talking about the NFC.
Absolutely.
Not the AFC. Clear cut, they are the team to beat. That's where I'm putting my stamp.
Mm-hmm.
You look last week, if you're the Vikings, you're a field goal away. Now, you got some help from Dan Campbell in the fake punt, but you're a field goal away from winning that game. You look if you're the Packers, do you believe that you're that far behind? Especially because the Lions defense is not great. Now, they played better last week.
Mm-hmm.
They still, I believe, to this Vikings team, gave up more average yards per play than they got, which was crazy because they got a lot of yards per play, and Jared Goff looked sick. So now you sit here and you go, okay, we put Cooper Kupp in. We're thinking a 31-28 game. Similar to I'm talking about the Packers. Similar to how the Vikings played last week. Can our defense get one stop? That one key turnover, whatever it is. I don't think the Packers are that far out from attending the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Now, do they get bulldozed by the Ravens or Kansas City? There's an argument for that.
Yes.
But coming out of the NFC right now, I do not think that they're that far behind
I don't
Detroit.
disagree with you. Do you think Tampa would say we owe it to Todd Bowles, to Baker, with what's happened with Godwin and Evans to go get somebody?
Yes.
Like, that division's up for grabs,
That division's definitely up for grabs. And, I mean, you look at Tampa Bay, been a bit of a strange team. They handed, now it was early, but they handed the Lions their only loss of the year.
Mm-hmm. In Detroit,
which was very surprising. A bit of a fluke, I would say. But even, the other night, starting against Baltimore, as you know, we were on Baltimore, and I'm like, holy smokes, the beginning part of that game, Tampa's cooking.
Yeah.
Now, the levee broke, but right now, everyone who plays the Ravens, the levee is breaking. It's just a matter of time of Lamar and Derrick Henry.
They are a juggernaut. They look, you talk about shock, like, how did they lose to the Raiders at home in week 2? That is more shocking than the Pats going into Cincinnati and winning.
Yes, and I think if you watch the Ravens the first couple of weeks, even the game they lost, which I know it was like, the toe against Kansas City week 1, a lot of that was, when I'm watching it from like an X and O standpoint, they had a hard time figuring out how to utilize Derrick Henry. And I think after those first 2 weeks when they're 0-2, it was like, hey, Derrick Henry is not a spread back. Mm-hmm. He's a downhill runner that's going to punish other teams, get downhill, and if he gets in that second level, he's still blazing. It might not look like he's running fast, but he's running fast, faster than everybody there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they've now kind of adjusted, found a way to really, utilize Derrick Henry and also have a passing game off of what was going on. Because, again, the first couple of weeks, it was like, Henry's in, we're running the ball. Justice Hill's in, we're now throwing the ball. And even though they're great players, in this league, you can't give teams that much of a tell. So, I mean, again, I know he doesn't look like he's motoring here, and he gets chipped here at the end, boom. But that's an angle tackle, just going to the screen there. I mean, this guy can motor an open field. So I think they've kind of figured out how to use Henry better and kind of use him to help Lamar as well. Mark Andrews heating up.
Yeah, Isaiah Likely's been good. They got
Rashad Bateman had, I think, 116 last game.
Think Cooper Kupp could make sense in Baltimore? Or?
See, to me, Baltimore's the one spot where if you're a receiver there, like
you're just a decoy.
You're a decoy or you're the big play guy.
Yeah.
They're going to use Zay Flowers on all the screens.
And he's a guy that he racks up like tons of catches.
Yes.
Like he's a guy.
Get your guy Cooper Kupp playing with Jordan Love.
Get him to Green Bay. I like it. You like that, Noodles?
I do. I think he can help there, and you know what? I think Green Bay is close.
Yes.
I've been tracking them a little bit. I know Hayes is a big fan of them.
Listen, you know what they did last week against Houston? They didn't even have their A game, but they were like, we're in this, and we're going to find a way to win the game. And that's exactly what they did. They did the same thing that Detroit did to Minnesota.
Yes.
Like they played the clock perfectly, which LaFleur's pretty good at, and they got a kicker. They actually have a kicker that I think they believe in, and
it's a big ordeal these days.
It is a big ordeal, those kickers. Go ahead, Noodles.
I had a quick one for Luke. how often do guys get tested with these PEDs? This Jameson Williams thing.
He's a mess, Williams, man.
I know. Honestly, I mean, is it a bunch of times through the season, or is it just randomly? I know in the NHL it's a little bit different.
Okay, so this is kind of a fun one for me, Noodles, because it is very strange. It's a very strange protocol in the NFL. So there's a big distinction between street drugs and PEDs. So our street drug test is once a year, and you're warned when it is. It's the same times. There's 2 separate periods. So when guys get popped for quote-unquote street drugs, that's generally telling that
you're such an idiot.
Yeah,
you're such a moron.
It's hard. It's honestly hard to get popped for street drugs.
Right.
Like, we would get a text being like, heads up, in 3 weeks, half of the team will be tested for street drugs. And once you get your annual, you walk out that door, you can take as many street drugs as you want, and you will not be in trouble.
Right.
So, and then the other half, so that was like the big joke in our locker room, was like, what half is it going to be? And they do it by position. So they might be like, oh, we're doing linebackers, tight ends, and, whomever, O-line, D-line, and then everyone else has got to wait. Is the first week of camp, you're now, like, it's 2 separate times.
Yeah.
The PEDs can be random whenever. So what they will do is they will pick, 7 guys after games or something like that. They'll pick another 6 or so or 5 Monday morning at the facility. So I always laugh when people are like, oh, man, I had like a huge game and I got tested, like randomly selected. I'm like, you weren't the only guy selected. Like, there were 7 dudes, 3 of which could have been inactive. Mm-hmm. Like, it just happened to be that you were tested.
Right.
Like, I don't buy this. The NFL has a guy that is like, oh, Jameson Williams played well. Let's put him on the PED list.
Right, exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Well, and the beauty of that is you tested positive.
Correct.
So they were actually really correct in doing that.
Correct.
Hey, I had a big game and they tested me. No kidding. You're on PEDs,
yes, dude. But the strange one is
like, it was actually a brilliant process.
Correct. Is during the offseason, PEDs, you're full go. So I remember the one time I got a guy knock. It just is a weird feeling, but he comes to you got to list where you're living. So I was living in LaSalle for the month. And if you don't list it and they call you and you're like, oh, you're not in Seattle, it's considered a fail. So like, if you even travel to like, hey, I'm taking 2 weeks and wherever, you're supposed to go on the site and fill in, like, if you want to drug test me during these 2 weeks, I'll be in the Bahamas. So they call the Detroit guy, and he crosses the border. I knew he was coming. He knocks on my childhood home, and I'm taking a piss with this guy sitting in my childhood bathroom.
No way.
It's just so weird. Like, man, get out of my house.
And then he just went back to the States.
Correct. But then the worst one was the next year, the same guy calls me. He goes, hey, I'm jammed up. I go, what do you mean? He goes, I got to test you, man, but I lost my passport. I can't cross the border. I said, it sounds like a personal problem, boss.
Yeah, not my issue.
He goes, dude, this would really help if you can make it over. I took a drug test at a Whole Foods in Detroit.
You're kidding me. Just crossed the border.
Went to the public bathroom and left.
No way.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It gets a little strange at times.
I guess so, man.
Yeah, it gets a little strange.
I mean, Noodles, you ever get tested? Like, you must have been at sometimes throughout your career.
Yeah, you get tested. I mean, it is random. We got tested as a goalie. We got tested for our gear. Like if our pads were illegal and all that, as you're walking off the ice, they will grab you, take you in a room, and they measure everything out to see if you've been adding and cheating and all of that. I got tested like that all the time. It's a good process. But the drug testing, it's not laid out like you, Luke. It's not like, hey, 3 months from now, don't do any street drugs, anything like that. It's just, it's random. And I think it's a good process.
You got to go through it. It's collectively bargained. I mean, that's the way it goes here.
For your own information, that I thought was the funniest thing of all the drug testing. I don't know if it's the same anymore, but when I first got in the league, the NFL could suspend you for PEDs, but they weren't, per the CBA, legally allowed to say what PED it was.
Right.
So there was this whole stretch of everybody took Adderall. I don't know if you remember this, but it was like, so-and-so got popped on PEDs. And they'd come up and make a statement like, oh, I took Adderall. Or what's the party drug that's considered a PED?
MDMA.
MDMA. So it'd be like, oh, I was in Vegas and took MDMA. So for all we know, Buddy got popped on the craziest anabolic steroid
ever.
Correct.
Yeah.
Has been juicing out of his mind, but for like public perception,
Adderall.
He's the one who's allowed to put a statement out and was like, I overdid my therapeutic use exemption of Adderall. Or I had a crazy weekend in Vegas.
I love it.
So that the public doesn't think he's just a juice head.
Yeah, it's just a good guy, man. Leave him alone.
Yeah.
Leave that guy alone.
I always thought that was kind of funny about our drug testing system.
That's right. Just like Doogie is, right?
Yeah.
Doogie, we love you. We always have.
Doogie's on MDMA right now.
Well, I mean, listen, he is seeing it straight. He is seeing the straight and narrow. Doogie knows what's up. All right, you're on Minnesota tonight.
I'm feeling good about it.
All right, you're laying 2.5 on the road. There it is. Lock it in. Al's brother will be a part of this tomorrow with more picks. We'll see you tomorrow afternoon.
Can't wait.
There's Luke Willson, our TSN football analyst, head of the Thursday Nighter tonight. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Joe Bowen coming up, and Matt Sundin will join us. Matt Sundin, I sat down with him earlier today. Matt's in that interview coming up. He's got a new book. It's out already, Home and Away. And, a lot of buzz about that. And there's something about Matt's when he rolls through town because he's obviously gone home. He lives in Sweden. But whenever he's back, there's a big buzz, and because you kind of take for granted, like, the Leaf legends that are around all the time, like Wendell and Tucker and Dougie and, like, those guys, like, they live here, they're from here, or at least they've made this their home,
right? They're visual. You see them.
Yeah,
a lot,
exactly.
Right?
You're like like they're around the rink, and they're in the city, and they're at different events. And when Matt's goes home for a few years and then comes back, you're like, wow, he's back. He's back in town. Like you think of emotional returns, like the Borio Solming return last year was just one you'll never ever forget. And there was another example of a Leaf legend, a Toronto legend that, left and would come back from time to time. And it was always a big scene when he did return. And really cool of Matt's to join us earlier today. So we'll play that into the next hour. And our best bet still to come as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050, soon to be up on TSN 2.